I'm just right off the start. We'll talk. I'm just going to breeze over some stuff really quick here and we'll get to it later because I want to jump in. But if anything, if you only take away one thing today about our program and what we do, it's that when we say Apex or no, the Nebraska Apex, we want you to think of government contracting. The interesting thing is that we recently went through a name change. We used to be the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, or PTAC. Some of you may have heard that acronym before, but we've actually gone through a rebrand and we are now the NBDC Apex Accelerator. So again, when I say Apex, you think government contracting. Again, we're a program of the Nebraska Business Development Center, which provides a host of free and confidential business consulting services. You can see a lot of the different areas that we cover at NBDC. I won't get into too much detail here today, but if you have basically any needs from business startup all the way to business end, we can either provide those or connect you with the correct resources to assist you. And I'm going to skip through these couple of slides because I want to get right into the presentation, but this information will be available to you and there's more information at the end as well. Real quick, some of the government contracting services that we provide in again, a free and confidential one-on-one consulting type work. Some of the stuff that you see here listed on the screen. Basically, everything that you see here is stuff that we're going to talk about today. So essentially, anything you hear today, if you are interested in pursuing any of these activities, those are things that we can assist you with. So for today's agenda on our intro to government contracting, we want to talk through some of the kind of questions and places within the journey that you're going to kind of landmark, I guess. So number one, is government contracting right for your business? We're going to look at some of the certifications and registrations required to do business, showing you how to look for contract opportunities and market in this industry, how to bid on contracts, and some other options. Now, government contracting is obviously a very lucrative market. As you can see here, this is the total contracting spend over the last 3 years at the federal government level. And so you can see they are the largest buyer of goods and services here in America. And so there's a large piece of the pie out there, and that's why so many businesses want to take advantage. 2020 was actually a record year for the federal government in terms of spending. 681 was kind of an unprecedented number. And that was because of COVID and some other things that happened that they needed to spend money. But it's gone down slightly over the last 2 years to kind of around where it was pre-COVID. But as you can see, generally, it typically tends to increase every year. And so when we talk about business resiliency with clients, this is a great market in terms of resiliency because the federal government will continue to spend money every year at a rate that's very high. So there's usually not too much worry about that, right? So for the government contracting process overall, kind of and boiled down into 8 points, even though this isn't as simple as this, but it's identifying your product, identifying your customer, identifying the categories that you qualify for, getting registered then, searching for opportunities, marketing, writing proposals, and bidding. So as we are talking with people who are maybe interested in the government market but haven't kind of dove headfirst yet, as you see here, there are some things that we like to do and questions that we like to answer right off the bat before you make the decision to actually kind of go all in on this market, because it is a little bit of a long process. So we just want to make sure that you know all the answers to some of these questions. So the first one is identifying your product. Now, the federal government uses a couple of different classification codes to classify different industries and products and services. Those are NAICS codes and PSC codes. So NAICS codes is the North American Industry Classification System. Basically, what those codes do is kind of tells the federal government what industry that you're in. And then a PSC code, or a product service code, tells the federal government specifically what kind of product or service that you sell. So those are the two ways that they classify your business, essentially. So it's very important to know what NAICS codes and PSC codes are relevant to your business and your different business lines. So that's the first step, and I've included the links to different resources for you here. The first being the NAICS code search. This website is a great website that you can search by keyword, or you can look at different industry breakdowns and kind of find the NAICS codes that maybe fit your business best. And then the PSC tool also does that as well for the PSC codes. Now the size standards, this is going to be important when we talk in a little bit about what classifies you as a small business. So the SBA, basically what they do is they take all of the NAICS codes that are out there, and then they assign either a dollar value or a number of employees for each of those NAICS codes that tells you whether your business is small or large. And so depending on what your average annual revenue is or the number of employees that you have, you want to take a look at this document within those NAICS codes to see whether you're small or not. Now, the nice thing is that the size standards are actually pretty generous. And I think their latest stat was that 95% of all businesses in the US would qualify as a small business under their standard. So more likely than not, you're probably a small business by SBA standards, but it's definitely important to check just to make sure, because you don't want to get in trouble there. So once you've identified your product in terms of how the government classifies it, the next thing that you can do then is identifying your government customer. So we talk a lot about market research when it comes to the government market, because it's very important to do your market research before diving into the market. And also the nice thing about doing business with the federal government is that everything is public record. So that means you can do really, really in-depth market research to fine tune and really identify who your customers would be and everything like that. So there's kind of three different types of market research that we can do, and I'll talk about all three of them today. But the first one that we want to do when we're kind of in this exploratory period is historical market research, right? So finding the awards or the contracts that were awarded in the past to be able to give us an idea of where the money's being spent, who the big players are, what kinds of NAICS codes they're typically buying things under. These are going to be questions that you're going to want to answer. The nice thing is that there's, again, all this information is public, and there's a really great website called usaspending.gov. It's a federal website that is pretty user-friendly, and you can go in there, create custom searches that are filtered by the NAICS codes that you picked. You can choose, if you want to limit it to a certain geographical area, you can put in different filters, and it'll spit out a bunch of data for you to kind of chew through, and you can export it to Excel. So it's a great website. Again, very user-friendly. You just kind of have to get in there and do some research. If that's something that you want some help with, though, please let us know, and we'd be happy to do that. Before this slide, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in, and I'll try to address them as I see them coming in. Just want to make sure that we don't miss anything if you have questions. Okay, so we've identified our product and services, and then we've done some past award search history to kind of see a little bit of preliminary market research. The next thing that we want to note is that the government has, every year they have government-wide procurement goals that they're trying to meet, right? So Congress essentially says, hey, we want you guys to spend this much on small businesses every year, and this much on small disadvantaged businesses every year, and woman-owned, and HUB-owned, and service-disabled veteran-owned. So these are different categories where every federal government agency across the board is trying to meet these goals. And for the most part, they actually do meet these goals and they exceed them. Every couple of years or so, they might fall behind in one category, but they do a pretty good job for the most part. So this is going to be important, because if you qualify for one of these programs, then you can see that they can restrict competition to folks that are only in your same kind of category, right? And so that's going to be very important. And I think this number is wrong here. This 5% should actually be 12%. I need to update this slide, so that's my bad. But the small disadvantaged business program, I believe, is at 12% this year, and it's going to grow over the next 3 years until it hits 15%. So that is a big change. All right, so then on this screen, We're going to then jump from here and talk about each of these different categories in a little bit more depth. So the small disadvantaged business actually encompasses two different kind of certifications, I would call them. One is actually a self-certification that you can do if you are a small disadvantaged business, which means that you're socially and economically disadvantaged. And if you meet those two criteria, you can actually self-certify as an SDB. But the other one that you can do is an 8A business development program, which is a formal certification process that you go through. This is again for small disadvantaged businesses who are socially and economically disadvantaged. It includes doing paperwork, submitting some documentation, but what it is essentially a 9-year program that you can get into once you're certified. And the Small Business Administration, once you're in the program, provides you with business development resources. They provide you with help getting your feet wet in federal contracting, with the goal that after 9 years, you're kind of ready to springboard yourself and take on federal government contracting by yourself. So it's a really great program. There are some nuances to it, as far as they want you to be in business for a certain number of years. Although, there are certain waivers that you can go through for that. And then, of course, the social and economically disadvantaged definitions, they do hold those on their website. So if you want more information about the program and the different requirements for that, the link is here on this website. Okay, the second certification we're going to talk about is the HubZone program. So the HubZone program stands for the Historically Underutilized Business Zone, and it's a geographic-based program. And so basically what the Small Business Administration does is every 3 to 5 years, they release a new HubZone map where they've identified certain pockets across the nation that have certain factors like low income, high unemployment, kind of things like that they've determined as being a HubZone. So this is kind of the current map you can see in Nebraska right here. And you can't really see, but there is some areas in Omaha and Lincoln as well. So you just have to zoom in and kind of look at that. And the map is right here, this link. So what's nice is you can type in your address right in there and it'll tell you if you're in a HubZone or not. But if you are in a HubZone and 35% of your employees live in a HubZone, doesn't have to be the same HubZone, but if they live in one, then you would qualify for this program. So there's more information about this program here at this link. And this is kind of the one that the federal government falls short on, I would say the most, is the HubZone program. It's tough for them to find enough HubZone businesses to set aside contracts for this. So if you end up being in a HubZone, it is advantageous for you to get certified in this if you're going to pursue government contracting. Okay, the Woman-Owned Small Business Program. This is another formal certification process now. It kind of recently got changed to a formal certification that is done by the Small Business Administration as well. And basically for this program, the requirements are that you be a small business in your NAICS code, you're 51% owned and operated by women. Again, the day-to-day operations are carried out by women. And for this program, unfortunately right now, they've identified only 446 of the NAICS codes that qualify for this program. And so those are based on industries that they have determined have been historically, where women have been underrepresented historically. So that's how they've determined those 446 NAICS codes. So if you meet the requirements for this one, very important that you go to this web page. There should be a link or a document on there that shows the different NAICS codes. So you're going to want to take your NAICS codes that you've determined are the best fit for you and see if they are a match for this program as well. And you can get more information there. All of these certifications as well, we typically do at least one training workshop each year on each of these specifically. So if one of them kind of piques your interest and you just want to learn more before, actually doing the certification, we can hook you up with one of those trainings. And then the last one I'll talk about is the Service Disabled Veteran on Small Business Certification. This one actually just recently, as in January 1st of this year, got moved over to the Small Business Administration. Prior to that, it was kind of a mix of the VA and also self-certifications, but now it's moved to the SBA, and the only option is to actually go through a certification process for this. Again, the requirements for this one are that the service disabled vet must be 51% own and operate the business, and must hold the highest officer position. When it comes to the service disabled veteran on small business certification, the Department of Veterans Affairs has a mandate from Congress called the Vets First program here, which basically says that the VA has the authority to go after companies who have an SDVOSB certification first. So any contract that the VA has, when they originally put it out, it always first goes out as an SDVOSB contract. So this is very beneficial if you do qualify for the SDVOSB and you're interested in doing work with the VA. This is a huge advantage to you. So I definitely encourage you that if you meet that requirement, you would look into getting certified. And there's more information here. This program, I've heard really good things about the transition to the SBA. They said that they're pushing applicants through pretty quickly, and it doesn't take super long to complete the application. So that's a very positive thing, and we're all about federal government doing things quickly, you know. So those are kind of the first considerations that we like you to look at or think about before actually jumping in. So if you've looked at your NAICS codes and your PSC codes, you've done some market research and determined that there are dollars being spent on those, and you can identify the agencies that are purchasing those. And you've kind of explored what are the certifications that I might apply for. And you think, hey, this might be a good fit for my business. I want to actually kind of try it out. Then we can start getting into this next section of kind of the necessary requirements of doing business with the government. The first of which is getting registered in SAM.gov. So SAM.gov is the System for Award Management. Essentially, it's the one-stop shop for everything federal contracting now. So if you are registered in the Secretary of State in Nebraska or whatever state that you're in, that is basically the first step, obviously, to being in business in general within a state. But once you have that, then you can go ahead and register in SAM.gov. It's a separate system because the federal government likes to kind of ask some more questions, get a little bit more documentation. It just kind of helps them to legitimize your business in the eyes of the federal government. It also helps them to get your banking information so that when you do get a contract, you can get paid. So this is why SAM.gov is kind of that first step that you have to do in order to do business with them. And you cannot bid on federal contracts until you are registered in here. So definitely once you make the determination that this market might be a fit for you, you want to start kind of doing this process right away. When you go through the SAM.gov application, you want to fill out as much information as you can. And excuse me, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about why in just a little bit here. But once you get your SAM.gov registration, you're going to get something called a unique entity identifier, which is a long series of letters and numbers that is unique to your business, and that's going to be beneficial to some of the next processes. So when you're going through the SAM.gov registration process, there are two self-certifications that you can identify your business as you go through that process. And it's a matter of just checking a box. The first one is self-certifying as a small business. So if you've taken your NAICS codes and you've looked at that SBA table of size standards and you've determined that your business is small, then you can go ahead and check that box in your SAM registration, and that tells the federal government that you're a small business. The second one is if you have looked through basically the requirements for the 8A program and you've determined that you are socially and economically disadvantaged small business, then you can also self-certify as a small disadvantaged business just by checking that box. It's very important to not falsify these things, because if you get a contract, if you're awarded a contract on the basis of being a small business or an SDB, and somebody protests that, then they're going to come back to you and try to see if that's actually legit. So just be honest with that, but those are both self-certifications. And then the next step, once you have that unique entity identifier, is that you can go through any of the 4 formal certification processes for woman-owned, HubZone, 8A, or SDVOSB. Okay, but that is a requirement to start any of those certifications, is first having that UEI number. But that's the next step. So once you're registered in SAM and you've done any of the self-certifications or formal certifications that you want, now you can basically start going out looking for contracts. I mean, you can really look for contracts at any point, but it's most beneficial to get all this stuff done. Then you can start looking for contracts and then bidding on them eventually. So the next question is, how do you find these contracts? Well, I'm going to point out a couple of resources that we have that if you are a client of ours, you will have access to. The first is called bid matching. And so we have access to a service called bid matching, which basically what happens is we'll sit down with you, we'll take your NAICS codes, your PSC codes, any keywords that you feel like apply to your business, any geographical preference that you have as far as doing business, we'll put them in our system. And then this goes out every day and searches through over 2,000 government websites for bid opportunities. This is federal, state, and local. And then it sends you an email of this list daily of any hits that you get on those. So this is a free service. If you were to go out there and get your own bid match service, it would cost quite a bit of money, but because we have this through our software, we're able to offer it to our clients for free. So if this is something that you'd be interested in getting set up on, you can certainly email me and we can kind of get the process started of this government contracting journey and lead you to getting on this bid matching service. The second thing that I'll plug is our Nebraska Bids email. So every Friday we send out a weekly email that has contract opportunities specifically in the state and local agencies. The reason why we do this is because sometimes it can be difficult to find all the bid opportunities from different state and local agencies. They're kind of all over the place. They have their own websites. So we subscribe to a service that collects all of that data, and then we go ahead and put it in an email for you each week. So this includes state, city, and county agencies, utility districts like OPPD and MUD, educational institutions like OPS, University of Nebraska. So again, another resource that we can provide to you for free. And all it takes is just emailing me and I can get you set up on here. And we'll talk more about state and local contracting at the end of the presentation because it's also very important. And then the final place that you're going to look for contracting opportunities, or kind of the main place, I guess, is going to be sam.gov. As far as federal contracts go. So for every federal agency, if their contract is higher than $25,000, they have to automatically post it on sam.gov. Anything below that, they don't necessarily have to, but a lot of federal agencies put their contracts that are under that threshold on here anyways, because it's easy and it gets the word out for the services and products that they're looking for. So this is a useful tool for you, and you're going to want to get familiar with it. So I put the link to the specific page on SAM where you actually go search for opportunities. Again, this is something that, myself or one of our consultants can sit down with you and kind of work through how to build a custom search in sam.gov and build saved searches, things like that. But it's similar to when you do market research on past award data, is you're going to use those NAICS codes, PSC codes, keywords, geographical preferences, and then, then you can go and search for kind of what's out there on the street that you can bid on. I would highly suggest going out here anyways, before you even get started, really, just to kind of get a feel for what it looks like, get a feel for what kind of contracts are in our geographical area that are already out there for you. It's a good website, so there's a lot of information there. All right, so this section that I'm titling Time to Convince the Buyer, I'm going to talk a little bit about marketing and maybe some of the different nuances that you're going to face in the government market as opposed to commercial marketing market. Um, that's a great comic there. So when it's time to convince the buyer, there are some different things that you're going to want to make sure of. Okay, so earlier I talked about when you fill out your SAM registration, you want to make sure that you fill it out as completely as possible, right? Well, the reason that's so important is because once you get registered in sam.gov, it automatically creates for you a profile in the dynamic small business search tool, if you're a small business, that is. And what the dynamic small business search tool, DSBS, is, it's essentially a database of all the small businesses who are registered in sam.gov, and it shows all of the information about those businesses that's pre-populated from SAM. So you want to put as much information in there. And then you also want to be able to go back into DSBS and create or get access to your account and then fill out even more information because there's more stuff on there that you can fill out. Why that's so important, though, is because contracting officers, if they're looking for a specific type of product or service, this is one of the first websites they're going to go to. They're going to go to DSBS. They're going to look for the specific NAICS code that they're looking to do a contract in, and they're going to look to see how many small businesses are out there that can perform in that NAICS code. And if they are looking through that list of all these different contractors and your profile doesn't have very much information in it, they're going to probably skip over your business. So you want to make sure that it's filled out, it's robust. It's just one of the easiest ways to have like kind of passive marketing for your business, essentially. And we can help you, our consultants can help you with that DSBS profile if that's something you'd like. The second thing is the same for the commercial market, right? Of having an easily accessible and robust business website. It doesn't have to be anything crazy either, just enough to for a contracting officer or somebody to be able to go to your website and see that you have some content there about what you do, who you are, that kind of stuff. Business cards, of course, are great as well. And then the other piece of physical marketing that you're going to want that's kind of different for the government market is called a capability statement. And I put an example of a capability statement right here. Essentially, what it is a one-page document that kind of boils down the products and services that you offer. It also includes things like your core competencies, the things that make you different, your differentiators, and then any of the information that's specifically pertinent to the federal market you include on here as well, like your UEI number, or if you're certified as a woman-owned small business, certain things like that. And then the final section that's really important on here is past performance. When it comes to the government market, past performance is kind of a big deal because the federal government is risk averse, right? They don't want to give a contract to somebody who they don't have a record of kind of what you've done in the past. Now, the good thing is that commercial experience does count. So as long as you can come up with a couple examples of past performance, even if it's at the commercial level, and be able to put that into nice qualitative and quantitative information for them, that usually does the trick, but very important. And then some other things for marketing in the federal market is one is attending industry days or conferences. So sometimes federal agencies will actually host their own industry days where they'll just pick a day every year and have people come to their office and basically kind of do like a speed dating kind of thing. But there are also other conferences that you can attend where you can kind of meet a lot of these different agencies at once. One that I'll talk about in a little bit is one that we host twice a year called our Meet the Buyers Conference. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit. And this is a picture from our last Meet the Buyers Conference. Calling and emailing is another way to do marketing, much like in the commercial space. If you can find the contact information for contracting officers or small business liaisons at these agencies, they're sometimes, I mean, it depends on the agency, right? They might be responsive, they might not be, but it's regardless, it's a way of sending them your capability statement or sending them information about your company. And connecting with buyers on LinkedIn is another option to look into as well. I included the link for the dynamic small business search tool here so you can kind of see what that website looks like. And if you do your SAM.gov registration, you can use this link to then get access to your DSPS profile. So that's a little bit about marketing. Then, of course, the big piece is going to be bidding or proposing on contracts. If you work in an industry like construction already, you're going to be familiar with some of these terms. If not, these might be new terms for you. I'm not going to get too into the weeds today. We do offer classes that go more in depth on the different types of proposals and the different ways to read them. But essentially the big four categories that you're going to see for bidding or for contracts fall under RFIs, which is a request for information, RFQ, a request for quotation, IFB, an invitation to bid, or an RFP, request for proposal. So an RFI and an RFQ are essentially information gathering type of solicitations that they'll put out there. So they're usually not actually looking for you to propose on a contract. What they're doing is they're looking for businesses to submit information to them to say either, yes, I would be able to do a contract with this scope in the future, or they'll look for a quote and all you have to do is submit basically a bid on that. Because they're just looking for information on how many companies are out there that can perform this, or what's the going rate for a certain product or service, etc. The last two are kind of the more like formal, actually bidding on contracts type. Invitation for bid is kind of your classic sealed bid solicitations used in a lot of construction, where you submit your bid on a certain project. They open them all at the same time, and then they usually award it to the lowest price. And then the final one is a request for proposal, which is usually the longest process out of all of these, but involves the most flexibility because it's a negotiated contract. So they'll put out a solicitation for an RFP. You will then read the requirements of that, and you will submit your proposal to that RFP by a certain date. And then usually they have periods where they can ask more questions, or they can get more information from the contractors before making a final determination. And the trend right now is that these also used to be bid often as lowest price, but thankfully the government is recognizing that they need to be bidding on lowest price. I can't think of the term, lowest price acceptable, basically. So it has to be able to fulfill the needs of the contract in a good quality manner, but still, have a decent price. So they're pushing more towards bidding that type of way, which is definitely a benefit to contractors who are doing good work and submitting good proposals. So that is kind of the process from all the way from the beginning to then all the way to bidding on contracts and all that good stuff. I do want to just throw a couple other options for you to consider though. If you are maybe you're maybe still thinking about this market, but it maybe is a little bit daunting. The federal market can definitely be daunting. One thing that we definitely like to point out is that state and local contracting is a great way to get started in selling to a government market. And it can help you get your foot in the door of doing business with federal government agencies as well, because these can be used for past performance. So I put a bunch of links here for you to check out. Just within the state of Nebraska here, we have the Department of Transportation that purchases lots of goods and services. And then the Nebraska Department of Administration is basically the other agency that purchases for all the other agencies in Nebraska, more or less. So between those two, those are kind of the big two state agencies that procure things. Then you can also look at the county and city level. Some of the big ones, of course, in our area is going to be Lincoln and Lancaster's County Purchasing Department, or Omaha and Douglas County Purchasing. They do a lot of purchasing of goods and services, and so you can go to their website and see what's out there out for bid. And then, of course, there's more cities and counties all across Nebraska, and each one of them needs to buy things. So they just have different ways of going about them, and you kind of just have to do some research to see, how your local municipality does business. And then the last one that kind of gets put under the state and local contracting market is utility districts and universities and educational institutions. So like University of Nebraska is a big one. They purchase a lot of goods and services for all 4 of their campuses. And then OPPD, NPPD, LES, MUD, these utility districts also buy a lot of goods and services as well. So definitely check out any of these if you're interested in maybe kind of dipping your toe into the market and not quite going all the way for federal contracting yet. I think this is a great starting place. Another option to consider is subcontracting. So within the federal government, there are lots of large prime contractors that win contracts who then bid out some of their work as subcontracting, right? So the nice thing about the federal market is that if a large business wins a contract, they also have to have a subcontracting plan that follows the breakdown of money that I showed you earlier. So, 23% from small business, 5% from women-owned. They have different goals throughout a year that these large prime contractors have to meet as well. And so if this is something that you're maybe not ready to bite off a whole prime contract by yourself, this might be a good place to start. There's lots of large primes here in Omaha, like HGR, Kiewit, J.E. Dunn, Turner, Union Pacific. All these companies are doing federal contracting, and they're needing some contractors to do some more of their specialty trades work or just other things as well. And again, this is a great way to increase past performance. The SBA has a nice tool called Subcontracting Network, where you can kind of go out there and large prime contractors have submitted their subcontracting plans to the Subcontracting Network website. So you can go out there and kind of see who's got what going on, what kinds of trades they're looking for. It's a great site. And then another consideration might be partnering opportunities. So there are a couple different programs that you can partake in. One would be the Mentor Protege program. There's 2 Mentor Protege programs. One is done by the SBA and one is done by the DoD. Any small business can participate in these, and essentially what happens is you enter into a formal agreement with it doesn't have to be a large business, it can be a small business, but it's typically a large, where the mentor is typically the large business and the protege is the small business, and they can work together and bid on contracts as a new entity, as a mentor protege. And so it gives the large business some advantages of being able to take advantage of your small status or your woman-owned status, say, and it gives you the advantage of being able to have a teaming partner who's been through it and can provide a lot of the labor and guidance. So that's just another one to consider as well. All right, that is kind of what I have for you. I'm just going to mention a couple things about our program before we end. But we do have a couple of newsletters that we send out. We have a monthly newsletter called our Nebraska GovCon newsletter that just contains some good information about the events that we have coming up. And then we also like to share different articles pertaining to things in the federal government contracting space that might be of interest to you. So there's that one. And then we have a weekly email that goes out just as a reminder of the upcoming events that we have. We typically have 4 or 5 events per month. So we're constantly doing quite a few workshops. So we like to keep people informed about what's coming up. so you don't miss some opportunities at some free training. And then, as I mentioned before, we have our Meet the Buyers conference, which we host twice per year. This one is coming up actually April 20th in Omaha, and it's going to be at the Barbara White's Community Engagement Center at UNO. So you can get more information at this link down here at the bottom, but this is kind of what it boils down to. At this point, we have 12, I believe, agencies confirmed so far to date. So you can see that list here, and there should be a couple more added on as we get closer to the event as well. This is a free event, so please feel free to register for it if you're interested. And it can seem a little daunting, but as I'm trying to tell people, the Meet the Buyers conference is really for anybody, even if you're just getting started out in the government market. This is like just an incredible resource for you to be able to get more information about the nuances of the federal market, meet some key players, and just kind of walk away with a better understanding, I feel like. So again, if you think it's a little daunting, I'd be happy to talk with you, and we'll help you get prepared for this conference if it's something that you want to do. Other than that, I am ready to take questions, I guess, and this is my contact information. Again, anything that we talked about today, or anything else with the government market, if you are interested in getting some assistance with that, I would be happy to put you in touch with one of our 5 consultants who can help you through that process. That's what we're here for, so please utilize us. All right, any questions?
Doesn't look like we have any questions quite yet. We'll keep giving it a little bit more time, but I'll throw a couple of questions at you. And thank you for the presentation. This is super informative.
Sure.
Just thinking through this, I mean, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you see on a regular basis? So someone is going into like that first contract with the government entity and trying to procure, or trying to get that procurement. And I'm sure it's different when it comes to like, consulting services versus, goods that they're selling to the government versus construction. But what are some of those initial hurdles that people really run into first time around?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of 3 big roadblocks. The first hurdle that obviously has to be overcome is the registrations and certifications, which more than anything is just a time thing. So being able to get those done and then waiting for that to finish up, that's definitely a hurdle. The second hurdle though is definitely that first contract, landing that first contract, which again basically goes back to the root problem of the government is risk averse, especially the federal government. So the best way to overcome that hurdle is going to be through past performance. And again, like I said, commercial work totally counts. So I think some of the ways I've seen it best is that when people are marketing their company to an agency, or typing up their capability statement, they're really successful when they're able to show the agency how they're going to be able to make their lives better, or save them money, or save them man hours. For like the DoD agencies in particular, they're always talking about how they can help the warfighter, in particular. So it's things like that. It just takes a little bit of extra time on your part to really know what your company is and how you can be better than your competitors, and be able to just put that into words, either written or verbal words that you can, use as marketing tools. So yeah, once you can kind of, show 3 different, I would say, past performance projects that have decent scope, and you can quantify and qualify those, that's definitely helpful. And then the second way is through state and local contracting, as I mentioned, just kind of getting that start.
And then still feel free to add questions to the chat or through the Q&A. I'm just thinking too, like, there's so many nonprofits that also have RFQs and RFPs that come out. Do you guys offer any assistance when it comes to landing some of those contracts?
Could you give me an example of a nonprofit, I guess?
So like Heartland Workforce Solutions, and
Yeah.
other like workforce boards, or just kind of smaller boards that may have a need for like strategic planning, or auditing of their finance programs, or things like that, that may be
Yeah.
smaller in value, but still go through that similar RFP, RFQ process.
That's a good question. And our program has gone with this name change. We've actually also gone through a shift in kind of our focus. And so in the past, I would have had to say no to that just because we were very hyper focused on federal only. But I think, yeah, I think that's something that we could definitely assist with. Um, as far as like proposal goes, I just need to make sure that everybody knows that we will not write a proposal for you. We are technical advisors, and so what that means is when it comes to proposals, we can sit down with you to be able to read through an RFP and understand it and know what they're asking for, so that when you do go to respond to it and write your proposal, you feel like you're confident enough to respond to that. And then the second thing that we can do in the terms of proposals is reviewing. So once you have one written, we can sit down with you just to make sure that you've fulfilled all the requirements of the RFP, and all that good stuff. So yeah, I think it's certainly something that we could help with, some of these like nonprofit type RFPs. That's something that we can help out with now. Um, but there are other organizations as well that do help out with that too, and we could definitely connect you.
And then also just another thought too is when it comes to pricing and developing the kind of that price structure associated with the response to the RFP, the RFQ, do you have resources that you can help connect people with to develop that pricing mechanism so that they're, you know, selling their
Yeah.
product or their services at the right amount?
Yeah, definitely. There's some good public resources. Again, the federal government posts, everything's public. So there's some good pricing resources, especially through the General Services Administration for a lot of industries. And we can help you navigate through that and find those prices. We can also help with some of the labor kind of pricing, as far as like Davis-Bacon and Service Contract Act goes, to help you kind of get a better understanding of how much you should be paying wage-wise, which will help your pricing as well. Um, and then, oh, I just had another one and I lost it, of course. But yeah, there's other resources too in Nebraska. One I'm thinking of is REACH program at the chamber, which we would definitely connect you with, especially if you're in construction. They have a lot of great resources for pricing also. So yeah, we have some resources, but we also know other people as well who can help.
Very cool. Well, thank you. I'm not seeing any new questions coming in. A lot of folks saying thank you and that the information was fantastic. And it really was. We definitely appreciate your time, Daniel, and your preparation. We'll get these items posted on our website too, so that people can
Yeah.
connect with you. Any final words or anything that you want to share?
I don't know if you're looking for a new opportunity, I guess, and you've never thought of this before, just give it a consideration, I would say. And if it's something you want to do, we're here for you. So please utilize us.
Very nice. Thank you again, Daniel. And hopefully we'll see the rest of you next month at our next Better Business Workshop, and enjoy that snowy weather today. Thank you, everybody, for attending.